Welcome back to the morning show here on Arise News. I am Nkichi Nana.
And I'm Rafal Yosedi. The Nigerian Security Printing and Minting PLC, also known as the Mint, began full operation in 1965 until date, is the only full-fledged security printing organization in the whole of African sub-region.
And apart from being the foremost in Africa, the Nigerian Security Printing and Minting Company's commitment to total security, integrity, and high-quality product and service delivery has earned the company an enviable position and the tag of being the most reputable security printing establishment in Africa.
Having worked in this reputable company for years with dignified integrity and prolific character, the former general manager of the Nigerian Security Printing and Minting Company, Olusegun Oshatola, who also spent some time in the manufacturing and media sector, now joins us in sharing his experience and managing Nigerian government high-profile organizations for profitability. It's a joy having you, sir, because this is very apt for this present moment. Take, for instance, the printing industry in this country. Is it true we still print our currencies abroad?
Well, I would say it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me here, and thank you for allowing me to make some clarification based on what I know in the past. Currently, I wouldn't think there should be any reason for printing Nigerian currency abroad because we did install enough capacity to ensure that we were able to meet the Nigerian demand.
But speaking of installing of capacity, around 2008, there was a big screaming headlines then saying that after the 12 billion naira investment in this, it's just all gone to waste. Nothing was done, that we still pretty much expend 60 billion as a dent to print abroad. And after the installation of installed capacity of about, expended with about 12 billion naira, the price of printing currencies abroad rose from 30 billion to 60 billion. So what happened around that time and how has it been sorted till today? Because there was a colossal investment when dollar was 150 to the US dollars of 12 billion. That's about, give or take, a sizable amount of dollars, expended, but nothing was done.
Well, I may not agree with what you have said because I was fully involved in the whole project. We did mint a mint that was actually run down. The facilities could not meet our demand. And when we came in, we did realize very quickly that we needed to do something. And again, we sat down based on where we were coming from. We were very well-trained technocrats coming from the private sector. And we needed to do things rightly. Within cost, within project, got all the necessary resources needed to ensure that we deliver the project on time and within cost. And to also ensure that the objective for the project was met. And the main objective at that time was to ensure that we reduced to the barest minimum the importation of currency, because it was supposed to be phased out over a few years. It wasn't something that was going to be done at once. And again, if you look at the technicality of the production equipment, you needed to see that people need to understand the equipment gradually. It's supposed to be a gentle negative slope, if you understand what I'm saying, that you keep importing but reducing over time as people got used to the equipment and the efficiencies of the machines pick up. So we did meet our objectives that we set out to achieve with the installation of the new line. In terms of what time, I may not be able to give you figures at the moment. But what I can tell you is that the production increased significantly from what we met on ground. We met on ground probably just producing a couple of hundreds of millions, and the requirement at that time was over 2 billion. So we needed to do something very quickly to justify our being brought into the system from a very well-organized private sector.
So do you think there's a problem or it poses a threat to Nigeria's national security and pride if our currencies are being printed abroad?
I would think so. I don't think there's any need to even print abroad in the first case anymore. If it's still being done, I don't know. Because we did have, I mean, right now we should have more than enough capacity. Because when we were doing the budget papers and the project papers, our focus was not just only on the Nigerian requirement. We were also looking at the West African requirement and also looking ahead at the ECO, because the ECO currency was already something that was already in the making at the time. So we needed to position ourselves ready to meet any demand. And certainly we had the capacity, we must have the capacity now to meet all our Naira demands, production-wise.
Okay, so the Mint company on its website says it prints above 40 million notes weekly. So what kind of strategies are employed to maintain the security of the notes that are printed, so there's no discrepancy from what is being printed and what the CBN, Nigeria Central Bank, is receiving? So there's an accountability of all the Naira notes that are being printed.
Okay, I can only tell you what we used to do since I've led there a couple of years. But again, I would want to believe that nothing would have changed significantly from what we were doing. In terms of looking at the integrity of the notes, I can assure you that the place is very secured. Printing-wise, extremely secured. Because all the necessary security issues are put into consideration, right from the design of the notes to the printing, to the security papers used in printing, to the ink, all very secured, right from the point of manufacturers to delivery. It's escorted as if the papers, production materials are escorted as if you're escorting banknotes. Because we know if it gets into wrong hands, they could try to play with it, even though they will not get it, but the damage would have been done. So on the production floor, it's even more stringent. There is no process you go through that there will be no security, there will be no accountability. You must account for every single sheet of paper that you use. And every banknote is accounted for. So issues of preferage is almost nil, if any at all.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Let me give some quick rebuttals.
Yeah.
You said most of the currency are printed here. A lot of people are saying no. That over 90% of Nigeria's currency are still printed and imported as we speak today. In fact, we remember in 1996 when General Sani Abacha, did set up the Abuja Mint, to be able to coordinate what we had in Lagos. There's this big scandal going on. De La Rue, a company that set up, the printing mint in the 60s in this country, there's this big scandal going on saying that there was a direct sabotage attempt to ensure that most of these currencies are still printed externally.
I don't want to believe. They may just be hearsays that most of the currencies are being printed abroad.
Over 90%.
I don't
think that's a hearsay value?
It cannot be
Before
correct.
you answer that, I just wanted
Yes.
to add that 2018, the Senate Committee on Banking, Insurance and Other Financial Institutions actually opened a probe to basically the scarcity of lower currency denominations. They went to inspect the minting company and found out that they were only printing 500 Naira and 1,000 Naira notes. So that kind of is in line with what he's saying.
Well, I don't want to believe that, because I don't think it will be correct based on what we were doing before I left. Before I left, we were printing all the currencies, both from 1,000 to 500 to 200 to 100, and including the lower denominations, which are in polymer.
Where are the polymer notes printed from, please?
Here.
But how about the stories of the polymer note being printed in Australia?
No. What is done in Australia is the substrate, not the printing of the notes. The substrate is like the paper upon which the notes are printed on, not the notes itself. So, on the issue of importation of about 90% requirement, I would doubt it very much, because we should have excess capacity. Before I left, we had capacity in excess of about $3.5 billion banknotes, again, depending on the various sizes. If you look at the size of the lower denominations, they are smaller than the sizes of the higher denominations. And the difficulty in printing varies as well. If not, the capacity, as at the time we were living, was almost 4 billion. And before I left, a project was already ongoing to add an additional 1.2 billion banknotes. Now, if you sum all that up, it's going to be about 5 billion banknotes. I'm not sure that CBN will place order of about 5 billion banknotes to the mint. So if you have such capacity, what would be the justification for importing banknotes?
Okay. Let's look at the purview of the mint. I'm not sure it's only banknotes the mint prints.
No.
Even, did they print ballot papers too?
That's correct.
So they printed ballot papers in the last elections?
I don't know. Again, as I said, I've left the place a couple of years.
Okay.
But I know they are always involved when it comes to issues of election, especially when it comes to issues of design, because I have been personally involved in the printing of ballot papers, both in Nigeria and overseas, because we didn't have the capacity to meet the demand within the time frame we were given.
Okay.
Yes.
So the ballot paper were printed both by the mint here.
Yes.
And let's talk about how much this was the excess, demand you had as at the time you left again, and the capacity you had.
We had installed capacity of about 3.5 billion, depending on the banknote sizes you are printing.
Okay.
Yes, because of the degrees of difficulties that you encounter when you are printing different sizes of notes.
Okay, so let's go back to the purview question now. What's the purview? Ballot, what is it called? Ballot papers?
Yes.
Passports?
Yeah, well, let me just give a breakdown.
Yeah.
The mint is divided into two major lines. You have the banknotes, and you also have what you call the security documents. The banknotes takes care of the printing of all the denominations, 500, 1,000, I mean, all the notes. Then you have the section which is responsible for security documents, has capability for passports, capacity for checks when checks were still in vogue, even though it's still in vogue, they can print it, and any other security document, like, name it, anything you want secured, they have the capacity to do that.
Okay, so let's move a bit away from minting and printing of currency and talk about your professional life, since you've worked in the government agency and you've worked in private sector, and many would say you've been successful. So what are, okay, before we come to this, we're going to go on a short break, and we'll be right back and continue talking to Mr. Olusegun Oshatola.
Right, welcome back to the morning show right here on Arise News. We're still talking to the former general manager of Nigerian Security Printing and Minting Company, Olusegun Oshatola. So we're asking a question earlier. We were talking about your professional life, we have started. So let's just go through that. But I still got some questions. I still need to ask you, and we talk about the printing once again. So a little bit about your professional life, as we sojourn on.
Okay. My first degree is in engineering. I graduated as a mechanical engineer. As a mechanical engineer, I went to University of Ilorin.
Yeah.
And after that, I wanted to be a chartered accountant. And I got recruited into Panel Foster, PKF. I'm sure a lot of people would know. Mm. But I got bored because it was an audit process, and it wasn't what I wanted. So I left. I went back into my field, which was engineering. I had since worked from oil and gas into manufacturing, Nigerian 7-Up, before I finally settled with Guinness. And with Guinness, Nigerian PLC, I did rise through the ranks. I was an assistant project engineer responsible for various projects across. And from there, I was put into the core activities of Guinness, which is production or packaging, as people will say, putting the beer in the bottle. That was the heart of the business. And having spent some time there, I was taken back to the UK to also learn and work on some very key global issues for Guinness, engineering issues. And from there I came back and started...
That was Diageo?
Diageo, yes.
Diageo.
Yes. The place is Guinness Packaging Roncon, one of the biggest Guinness plants in the world. And from there, I came back to Nigeria, and I was made to head a critical arm of Guinness Nigeria, which is manufacturing or production, as people, packaging, as people call it. And from there, you needed to do things rightly, because what you do will definitely affect the bottom line, the profit and loss of the business. So they don't normally put people who are not very good to handle that aspect. And again, in all aspects of Guinness, you must be good, number one, to even get into the place. Yes, and as you keep working, and people start noticing you, the company start noticing your performance, then they keep moving you and keep giving you all the necessary trainings. And after being a packaging manager for a couple of years, I went back into projects again to handle some of the critical Guinness projects. And from there, I was made a project leader asset care for all the assets of Guinness in Nigeria.
That's a very strategic position.
Yes. I left as a project leader asset care to oversee all the assets of Guinness, Nigeria, and see how you can make them better to produce based on design.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So, really very exciting prospect you have.
Right.
But a quick question. Let's go back to the Minton past a little bit. The intaglio paint, the intaglio ink,
Yes.
normally used for printing. There used to be a factory in Nigeria that manufactured that. Has it been resuscitated?
Well, we had a factory called Tawada that produces some inks. We get the pigments, and then we produce some inks. But you also have different types of inks. Again, I will not want to go too deeply into the type of inks being used because of some of the security implications. So yes, we do have a plant in Nigeria, Tawada Nigeria Limited, that produces some of our inks, not all. Then some of the highly sensitive, very sensitive ones, we needed to import because we still do not have the capacity to produce them here. Okay. If we had, we definitely would have been producing. But I don't know if they have started producing some of those.
So, but is the factory resuscitated because it was down at some point?
No, it's been working. It has always been working.
Okay.
Yes. All the while I was there, it was working and producing ink.
Okay. So at your time at the Mint Company, was there any particular time where the printing company was not contracted to print, let's say, some denominations, for example, lower denominations? I know in maybe 2015 to 2016, there was scarcity of lower denominations, and some people attributed it to the fact that the CBN did not contract the minting company to print those denominations. Was there any situation like that? And if yes, what would be the reason?
Well, I would say within the time frame you have mentioned, I was already out of the place. But I know that printing lower denominations was one of the easiest printing one can do. It was much easier, much smoother, much machine friendly. So I wouldn't know why they didn't give Mint the order to produce the lower denomination. But in terms of capacity, the Mint has the capacity to produce any denomination. The most challenging of the notes, which is the 1,000 Naira note, is still being produced. Yes, so
Okay, so, sorry, having worked in the private institution and public institution, just going back a bit into being a professional before working for the government, what are some of the basic competencies and ethical orientations that you would suggest to a professional who's trying to get into or maybe wanting to accept a government appointment?
Well, number one, you must be very good at what you do. You must be very well trained, not just in your technical areas, in HR, people management, material management skills. And that is if you are going in at the highest level of management, because we were the top executives running the organization at the time. And if you go into a quasi-public sector environment, you need to know and have understood what the whole organization is all about. What are the people? How do they relate? What skills do they have? How do they look at things? You also need to know that you need to work much harder than where you are coming from.
Okay.
Yes. Because the selection process in a quasi-government is different from the selection process in the private sector.
Okay.
You need to be sure that when you get in, to reorientate the people to meet world-class standards,
okay,
should be what you need to do,
okay,
to ensure that the organization moves forward. You need to create a sense of urgency across board. You also need to ensure that key performance indicators, objectives are set and clearly understood by all.
So let me segue that into currently the ministers we just newly have, because they've got a lot to learn from you. The question will be, why is it that when people are in the public, so when they're maybe in private practice or something, but once they get into government, there's sort of like a misbehavior once they get into government. With your experiences at Nigerian security meetings and printing, what are the lessons they can learn from you? And what will you tell those new ministers? You've seen it all. You've been invited by the EFCC. You've gone through all of that ordeal and things like that. You've come out on the other side. What are the lessons they can learn from you?
Well, one of the things I can say is that you must be very clear in what you want to do. Very, very clear. And you must ensure that you document things. You don't assume. Because you never know who is going to use what against you. Documentation is extremely key. In as much as you want to do the best, come up with the best performances, what you document is as critical as the results you achieve. Because tomorrow, an investigation can come up, again, due to no fault of yours, to say, what do you know about this? The word of mouth will not save you. It is what has been documented, going through the right process, carrying everybody along, and people coming together to say, yes, we know about this, that will really save you. You must also ensure that you provide the right leadership. If you are in an area where you don't have the competence, seek approval from the next higher authority to get experts around you that will help you to monitor what your subordinates are doing and also be able to come up with clear objectives, measurable ones, because you need to be able to give your direct reports targets to meet. If you are sitting at the top and you want things to be done, the objectives is what will help you to manage. If you don't have the objectives, key performance indicators, you really can't manage. What you can't measure, you can't manage. So, for some of the ministers who are in areas where it's not their core competence, they need to get experts around them. And some of those experts that must be gotten you must use very good criteria in selecting them. You must come up with templates of criteria other than using excellence to select. If you use any other criteria to select people who will work with you, then you have on the path of failure. There is no other way.
Or tribal, no sentimental,
religious sentiments, no. Once you bring that in, then you are on the path of failure. If you want to achieve, you must be ready to work with only the best. And if you have people who are not the best in your system, you must put a training program in place that will help to develop the people. But again, you yourself as the leader must show capacity.
Okay.
Yes, if you don't show capacity, you lose the respect of your subordinates, because the subordinates will look up to you when they have issues.
Okay.
Yes.
We'd like to say a very big thank you, because this is like a master class we've had today. I'd like to say a very big thank you, and definitely we'll still have you here to come share this insight after this break. All right. When we come back after this break, we've got a lot more coming your way on the morning show. Right, welcome back. Still the morning show here on Rise News. Mr. Olusegun Oshatola, former general manager of the security and printing and minting company, has just been sharing so many great insights. And, we will be continuing with you for the next couple of minutes here. And you were sharing those very important nuggets, about leadership, about working in the government space. And you talked about record keeping. Record keeping, very important, especially having your deal with the AFCC. What did that teach you? Well,
going back to the issue of record keeping, I cannot overemphasize, because again, you are in the public space, and when the public comes to you to render account on what you have done, you must be able to come up with documents that the organizations that have been given the right to verify can verify and ensure that, yes, you have done what you're supposed to do within the time you're supposed to do it. Now, coming to other areas about people who are coming from private sector going to public sector, what do they need to do? One, you must be very, very sound in the area that you are going to work. Because that is an area where people can just come and bring issues to your table. If you don't know anything about it, and you just sign, they will just take it and keep. You don't know the motives. If you don't, what you don't know, you don't know. You can't give what you don't have. If you are sufficiently trained, I will give an example. Because I have worked in projects and in manufacturing most of my life, coming into the mint, it was more like a piece of cake. You could see very clearly what was wrong, and you could just come up with solutions on what needed to be done, and you were seeing the result within the shortest time possible. But if you didn't have the depth of training, other than the physical training you are going through, you also need to educate yourself. I was trained to the highest level on project management. I was given very critical assignment in Guinea that you can't fail, because if you fail, you know the implication. And if you can't fail, what do you need to do? Your planning must be very right, it must be sound.
So talking about providing solutions at your time at the Mint company, yes. If you ever had any chance to be appointed to run the Mint again, what are some of the specific things that you would do differently?
Well, number one, on the issue of the printing of the banknotes, it's fairly standard. There's probably really nothing to add or subtract. It's fairly other than to continue to upgrade, update, modernize, put securities in the notes and all that to make sure that the counterfeiters can not really do much on it. The area I will concentrate on will be the issue of the area of the security document, because the security document has such large potential. That is where the passports are. Right now, I'm happy that Mr. President has said that all passports must be printed in Nigeria. We really wanted to do that before I left. I had gotten approval to establish an buy machine to print the passports. But again, based on the training and based on some of what we were seeing at the time, you can't go place order for machine when the government's order has not been given to you directly. You have been told verbally, go and buy the machine, but the order for the passport has not been placed in your hands. So now as a manager, what do? Do you go buy the machine and the order is not in your hand?
That brings us back to documentation.
Documentation,
basically.
Or you wait for the order to come and you buy the machine. For me, my recommendation at the time, which the board did agree with, was that, look, let's not spend money buying machine when the order has not been, the order is not in your hand. Because if you buy machine and the order is not in your hand, you have just wasted money on an asset. It will just sit there. Because if other companies have been given orders to produce...
I mean, let's explore that. Why, I mean, it only made economic sense that the passports of the Federal Republic of Nigeria and other travel documents should be printed in this country for many reasons. Number one, for national pride. Two, for national security. You know, if you see currently the case going on between Huawei and America and Trump, for the case of national security and things like that. So why is that the order stalled? Can you tell us, you know, the backstory?
I don't know, really. It will be my reply to the answer. But in terms of capacity or resources, both human and otherwise, to print a passport, the Mint has the capacity to produce it. And if there's any technical requirement they need that they don't have, they can easily outsource that. It's much easier to get an expert in passport to come and work with you, train your people on how to produce it, get the technology in, produce the passport, get one or two people to train your people on how to produce, and you continue to produce it, than continuing to import the passport. We didn't see it as making economic sense, but again, we couldn't challenge the decision. We got to the point of being given the order verbally. But verbal orders will put you into trouble if you don't have documented orders. And again, this is one of the areas where most people run into problem. You have people, if it's in the private sector, and your boss tells you, you need to go and do this, there's that integrity that he will not deny you. If he denies you, there is this 360-degree feedback appraisal we normally had when I was in Guinea. I don't know if he's still there. You will write against him that you asked me to do this, I did it, and you are now denying me that you didn't ask me to do it. It goes a long way to affect the boss's career. But in private sector, it's not like that. Is your document against my document? No words is taken when you need to show that this is what you have done. It must be documented. That is the only proof you have. So if there's no proof that you have been given order, even though you have been given the order verbally to go and produce passport, we were given verbal orders to produce passport. But verbal orders will not suffice in the environment that we were operating. It wasn't sufficient for us to make investments in buying a passport production line. We needed something documented from the office of Mr. President saying you have been given an order to produce so and so
which
million,
documented,
which we didn't get. And because we didn't get it, even though it was announced on the NTA that yes, Mint has been given order to produce passport, but because we didn't get the written approval, it was risky to go.
I mean, many insights from that, and As we start to wrap up this conversation, I mean, it just shows you a lot that we need to learn about working in government. And I'm sure that those that are holding ministerial positions have heard this, that despite the fact that it was announced on the network service of a government establishment.
It's not enough.
It's not enough. You still need to get the authentication. Let's quickly talk about the welfare.
Okay. Before we go to the welfare, I want to talk briefly about the issue of the EFCC you mentioned.
Yeah.
And again, just to re-emphasize again, that again, they are there to invite you. If they have any issue, there's nothing wrong in them inviting you to show up, to explain certain things which they would need explaining. And if you explain, they will investigate and find out that you have nothing, they ask you to go, which was what happened in my case. They invited and said, I was quite happy that they called, and they said, Mr. Oshatola, well done, sit down, very cautious and all that. And they said, what do you know about this? And I told them what I knew about it, and I brought proofs. The proofs, again, was not just even enough. They called the subordinates, and not just the subordinates, people who were working together, my peers, even my bosses, my subordinate, everybody was called to a round table. Hear what he is saying. Is what he is saying exactly the way he has said? And they said yes. Then they said, okay, you can go. We have no issue. Thank you for coming. And that was it.
So, sorry, speaking about your boss, your former boss, I mean, who was convicted of corruption, you were said to be close to him. Can you tell us a little bit more about your relationship with him?
I don't know if he is convicted. I know he was undergoing some trials.
Awaiting extradition to the UK.
Yeah, I don't have the details. Okay. Again, as I said, I have left the place a long time. Yes, we were close, because we were working together very, very closely. And we came from the same background. He's a mechanical engineer, I'm a mechanical engineer. And he was my immediate boss at Guinness. And he's such a very brilliant, intelligent, highly focused person. So I learned a lot from him. So if I can learn very good things from you, I will come close so that I can gain. He also did learn a lot of things from me as well. So it was a mutual learning together. So going into the Mint, people saw that, but again, it was more about work.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah, we were close because we were all performance driven.
Okay.
Yes.
So it's more or less a work relationship.
Yeah.
In a couple of seconds, the welfare of the members of staff of the Mint have been called to question. We have cases of the story state at which some of pensioners of the Mint, or those who have worked in the Mint before, are living today. You have a quick comment about that before we go for a quick break?
Well, all I can say is that before we left, everybody was being properly taken care of in terms of what they are being paid, what they are supposed to be paid, issues of negotiation, when it's time for negotiation for increment, that was being done with speed. So whatever is happening now, I'm not in a good position to tell you, but while we were there, there was nothing like that.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. I'd like to say a very big thank you to you once again.
Thank you.
Really thank you for your time, for coming here.